AWANI tonight. Sarawak elections must be held now, says Chief Minister, and importance of conserving identity of indigenous people. That's coming up. There is no other choice but to hold Sarawak elections now. Chief Minister Datuk Patinggi Abang Johari Tun Openg said the Gabungan Party Sarawak government would be betraying its oath if it were to hang on to power without returning the mandate to the people first. Abang Johari said that his government no longer have the people's mandate if the emergency had not been proclaimed, since the State Legislative Assembly would have been dissolved by June 7th this year. He added that this was the reason behind seeking the Yang di-Pertuan Agong's consent to end the emergency earlier. The Election Commission has been officially notified on His Majesty's royal assent to end the state of emergency yesterday. Sarawak election is now set to be held within 60 days, with a date yet to be decided. GPS is currently assuming the role of a caretaker government until the next government is elected. Meanwhile, Dewan Rakyat Speaker Dato' Azhar Azizan Harun announced that 4 out of the 9 parliamentary select committees will be headed by the opposition MPs. Chairperson of the committee is also divided between the government and opposition in a ratio of 5-4. Government MPs selected as chairperson include Bersatu's Datuk Sri Azizah Muhammad Don for fundamental freedoms and rights under the Constitution, UMNO's Datuk Sri Hassan Arifin for finance and economy, and PAS's Abdul Latif Abdul Rahman for agencies under the Prime Minister's department. GPS Yusof Abdul Wahid will head infrastructure development, and UMNO's Datuk Sri Azalina Osman Said for women and child affairs and social development. For opposition MPs, PKR's Datuk Johari Abdul will be in charge for security, and PKR's Datuk Sri Saifuddin Nasution Ismail for agriculture and domestic trade. Independent MP Dr. Mazli Malik will head education, and DAP's Dr. Kelvin Yee for health, science and innovation. Azhar said the decision followed the parliamentary restructuring and reform after the Memorandum of Understanding was signed between the federal government and Pakatan Harapan last September 13th. He added that the Select Committee on International Affairs will also be established, bringing the total number of select committees to 10. The Select Committee is currently in the process of selecting members. DAP will retain 6 candidates while introducing 2 new faces in its lineup for the Malacca state election. DAP Secretary General Lim Guan Eng announced the candidates in a virtual press conference at the DAP headquarters in Kuala Lumpur today. The 2 new faces, Muhammad Danish Zainuddin and Leng Chao Yen, would be fielded in the Pengkalan Batu and Bandar Hilir seats respectively. The others are Saminaran Ganesan Gade, Kirk Chi Yi Air Keroh, Alex Siasu Chin Kesidang, Lo Chi Leong Kota Laksamana, Damian Yeo Shen Lee Duyong, and Teh Kok Kiu Bemban. All 6 will contest in the election under Pakatan Harapan's logo. DAP is the first among PH parties to announce their candidates ahead of nominations day on November 8th. Polling is set on November 20. In order to maximize benefits when targeting particular groups under Budget 2022, it's important to know the recipient and how much will they benefit from it. Professor at Center for Research on Women and Gender, University Science Malaysia Kanita, Dr. Noraida Endot urged the Finance Ministry to devise a budget based on data for different needs of different groups, especially for women and children.
The reason that the job losses for women may not be reflected in the data was because perhaps women's labour force participation rate is actually lower in any case. It's already much lower than men, and also there are many women are also in the informal sector, so where the data may not be reflected. So if they are in the informal sector, so if now women are basically earning for the family through the informal sector, so what kind of assistance can we provide in this kind of context? And also we need to look at so there are different. What we need to do is really to collect the right data, to collect sex disaggregated data, where we look at the different impact of the different elements that happened during the pandemic to both women and men.
She believes in the need to change how a budget is structured and add more importance to critical elements in solving an issue like domestic violence.
In terms of services for violence against women, for example, yes, I think the D11, the JKM staff are getting an allocation. I mean, their jobs are very important. So their job, the compensation for their job, they need to be compensated more fairly. They need to be, their professionalism needs to be valued more through the increase in their allowances and so on. So that's very important. But also, I think important are whether allocations are being made for their training, for their awareness about gender issues. Because when they're dealing with violence against women, domestic violence, rape, sexual harassment, violence, violence now, technology facilitated violence, and so on. So this require a lot of improved knowledge base, about gender relations, about the different elements in the violence.
Was Budget 2022 fair in its allocation to Sabah and Sarawak? How does one assess it? Tonight on Consider This, we ask our guests if East Malaysia's development needs are being addressed. We'll take a quick break. Stay with us.
Amanah di tangan kita. Adat, budaya dan semangat menjadi kesinambungan perpaduan tanah air yang tercinta. Berteraskan adab yang terpahat di jiwa dan raga. Marilah bersama kita membina negara Malaysia.
Untuk memastikan Malaysia ada ke depan
kita boleh maju. Induknya adalah Melayu.
Balik kepada support system. This is orang yang membuat polisi.
Kalau itu yang dikehendaki, fine. Mungkin kita berbeza pandangan.
Tapi kita mempunyai kuasa yang boleh menentukan budaya di masa hadapan.
Polisi yang mesra wanita.
Welcome back. In our efforts to preserve the environment, there is a need to not neglect the rights of indigenous people. Climate Action Malaysia chairperson Ili Nadia Zulkafar said the loss of identity of this group will result in the loss of knowledge needed to sustain a future for younger generations.
There's a lot of things that we can learn from the indigenous people. That's for definite. For example, the way that they forage items, they forage they forage resources from the forest or any kind of natural resources is being done with the intention that they wouldn't want to exhaust the resource. So they view natural resources and forests as a responsibility that they should pass on to their next generation, to their to their daughters, to their sons. So it's being done. It's being done with the intention that sustainable consumption, something like a modern concept, that they have already done it and they've already do it really well. And this is something that we can learn when we speak about sustainable consumption, circularity, for example. These communities has been doing it for hundreds of years.
The Orang Asli Temuan community were given opportunity to share their plight through art at the Global Climate Summit COP26 under the Weaving Hopes initiative funded by the British Council in Malaysia.
This community, as we know, much of them lives in Selangor, and Selangor is also, we all know that Selangor has been, the loss of forest in Selangor has been on the rise. It's the most developed state in Malaysia. So these people have experienced a displacement, the loss of customary land, and through this art, it shows that how hard it is for them to actually continue their way of life, their tradition, and craft itself is not just a piece of art. It has its function, but it also has knowledge behind it, because you need precision, you need design skills to actually make this, and it's not being made from plastic or something like that. You have to forage, you have to go to the forest, and you have to they have to forage sustainably, because the mengkuang leaves, which is the fibers being made to weave, is dwindling.
On to international news. Highways and schools in Beijing were closed today due to heavy air pollution. Thick smog, likely caused by China's recent rise in daily coal production, is expected to persist until at least tomorrow evening. Stretches of highways to major cities, including Shanghai, Tianjin, and Harbin, were closed due to poor visibility. Schools in the capital were also ordered to stop physical classes and outdoor activities. The weather forecast revealed thick haze of smog covering swaths of northern China, seen in areas reduced to less than 200 meters. Authorities blamed the pollution on unfavorable weather conditions and regional pollution spread. China, the world's largest emitter of greenhouse gases, ramped up coal output in recent months. This was after supply chains were caused by an energy crunch, owing to strict emissions targets and record prices for fossil fuel. Beijing pledged at COP26 to bring CO2 emissions to a peak by 2030 and reduce them to net zero by 2060. In other news, despite ample vaccine supplies, Europe has seen more than a 50% jump in COVID-19 cases in the last month. Top officials from the World Health Organization said the region has become the new epicenter of the pandemic. They said while there are plenty of vaccines available, uptake of vaccine has not been equal. WHO Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus also called for countries to donate their booster doses to developing countries that have yet to offer their citizens a first dose.
No more vaccines should go to countries that have already vaccinated more than 40% of their population until COVAX has the vaccines it needs to help other countries get there too. No more boosters should be administered except to immunocompromised people.
More than 60 countries have started giving booster doses to combat waning immunity as a new COVID-19 wave is expected. Now, Japan will reopen borders in phases beginning Monday, focusing on business travelers. It will shorten COVID-19 quarantine periods for inbound business travelers from 10 days to 3 if they have proof of vaccination. Students and trainee workers with valid visas will also be allowed in. Japan currently requires a 10-day quarantine for travelers regardless of vaccination status. The time was shortened from 14 days last month. Domestic and foreign business groups in Japan have called for the government to ease border restrictions and make it more in line with other countries such as the US and Europe, which allow entry to travelers from most countries as long as they're vaccinated. That is all we have for you on AWANI tonight. Get the latest news updates of COVID-19 and COVID-19 vaccines from astroawani.com and the Astro AWANI app. I'm Sarawak. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you soon.